Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and today we have with us my friend, Miss Kyla Courte. How's it going, Kyla?
Oh, Payman, hi. It's going great. Thank you. It's nice to be here with you.
No, thank you very much for making the time.
Mhm.
Kyla, this is our second interview together, but it's the first one that will be published. We had some technical difficulties last time.
We did, and I've done my best to avoid those today. So,
No, not. I'm not laying any blame. It was a group effort. We both failed.
yeah, it's a learning opportunity.
Yep. And today here we are. So why don't we start? Maybe if you could give a little background on who you are, maybe where you grew up, what you do for a living.
Okay, so my name is Kyla Courte. I am born and raised here in Red Deer, Alberta. I've had a few different careers over my lifetime, but primarily I was a financial advisor. I'm a certified financial planner. February of this year, I've taken a step away from that, and I'm currently a produce manager at an organic health food store, which is a real passion opportunity for me. I get to be around people who are healthy and vibrant and working with all sorts of fruits and vegetables, which I've always really loved. And I'm born and raised right here in Red Deer. That's the riding that I'm a candidate for. And that's me in a nutshell.
So have you had prior political experience?
I've not. So I'm someone who has always been very active in my own heart politically, but I've not actually put my name out there before. I've done volunteering from time to time, but this is sort of the first step into really learning what it means to be a candidate and hopefully earning the opportunity to serve my community.
So this is a question I usually start with all the new PPC candidates. Why did you decide to join the People's Party, which is less funding, less name recognition? So for a first-time candidate, it's almost like you're jumping in the deep end. What made you make that decision?
So I chose the People's Party of Canada because they are the party that represents my values. They are the party that I saw standing true to who they are from their inception until now. I was traditionally a left voter. I voted NDP the majority of my life. When Jack Layton passed away, my heart didn't feel the same integrity within that party that it had when he was at its helm. And truth be told, I didn't feel that integrity until I encountered Maxime Bernier speaking in the early to mid days of COVID. And I was like, I need to know more about this party. And it was the one that I finally felt convicted enough to put my name behind and put my efforts into. And even though it's a bit of an uphill battle being the new guy, we have all of the advantages that mainstream parties have sort of lost of that really just grassroots movement, and I love it.
I've talked to a couple other candidates within the People's Party that are, and this is going to be my words, disenfranchised NDP voters.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about Jack Layton that you found appealing, and what changed after his departure?
Man, so it's been such a long time, and I've actually went back and watched a few little Jack Layton clips just to remind myself, because things have changed so dramatically since 2011. And it was really his heart. Like when he spoke, it was from his heart. You could tell there was integrity there. He was a man for the people. And when Mulcair took over and then followed by Singh, that feeling evacuated the room quite quickly. I also was a union member at the time, and NDP and unions are like bread and butter together. So it just, a lot has shifted there. And really, I feel like the same things that attracted me to the NDP at that time attracted me to the People's Party at this time. And I feel that same energy when I've spent time with Maxime Bernier. Just that humble humility and that pureness of heart. So.
Picking up on one thing you said, you were talking about unions. Like, what is the? I'm throwing you a softball question here, but what's the purpose of a union, and what changed? Because I don't think they fulfilled their mandate during COVID.
No. So my idea of a union was a body that would fight on behalf of the people. They were workers' rights. They were, workers' rights are human rights. It was all very cohesive. And during COVID, I was very grateful. I had family members who were still part of the same union that I had belonged to. And a close family member of mine, she was pregnant at the time and was nervous about having to receive a vaccine that hadn't been around for very long. And I was kind of like, oh, thank goodness that the union's there. They'll be able to advocate on her behalf, and it won't be the end of the world. And then it was like all of the air got pulled out of the room when I realized that wasn't the case. And there was nobody there to fight on behalf of workers when it came down to COVID and a lot of the decisions that were made during that time.
Well, moving along, this is the second question I always ask candidates. You've told us why you chose to run for the People's Party, but why didn't you run for the Conservative Party?
I have never felt myself aligned with the Conservative Party. Even when I've, found myself possessing more right-leaning values, I don't see those expressed within the Conservative Party of Canada. I feel the same superficial tell you what you want to hear when it's convenient, or when there's no real risk in saying the thing that I witness with parties like the Liberal and the NDP. I feel that same vein in the Conservative Party. And that's just one of many reasons why it was never even a thought to align myself there.
I'm going to ask the question in a different way, and it's not that you didn't answer it, but whenever I find out that someone is some PPC candidate is a former NDP supporter,
yeah.
It's almost given that they would never vote for the Conservative Party of Canada. So asking it not as in the terms of why didn't you run for the Conservative Party, but what would always inhibit you from voting for the Conservative Party? Like, what is it about them that you find so offensive?
Oh, that's a good question. So I just find it very offensive that that lack of conviction, that just, changing and evolving. And I know that we all change and evolve. I wouldn't be here if we didn't, but it seems to be perfectly timed with with when it's convenient to start speaking up about things that were always the right thing, but were not maybe the popular thing to say. So it kind of comes down to that. I also just loosely following their leadership races. I mean, I became I bought a membership to the Conservative Party of Canada to be able to vote for their latest membership race. And there was just nothing in Pierre Poilievre's leadership that I felt was something that interested me in even voting for. It just was I'm a bit of a feeling person, and so maybe my answers aren't like, their policy, they're this, they're that. I've never been really that excited about any of their policies. It feels like they are a bit of fence sitting, like it's not real true conviction one way or the other. So, and I mean, at the end of the day, our mainstream parties are influenced by people outside of the Canadian public, and I just don't love that.
I did a mental exercise. I said like what one word would define the parties, and if I can remember correctly, for the Green Party, I said like climate change. That's two words. For the NDP, I don't like this, but I said communist. For the Liberals, I said like woke, but I couldn't think of anything for the Conservatives. Like I don't think they stand for anything.
Yeah, I know. And even when I'm just like thinking about that, that's the sense that I get. Maybe like hollow, or, like there's just, yeah, surface, like skin deep. I don't know. It's just not, it doesn't land in my heart when I hear the Conservative Party of Canada speak, or, yeah, but that's,
Maybe maybe I just don't want to see it, but they used to say that the Conservative Party represented like the corporate interest.
Mhm.
Maybe it's the corporatist party. It's just not a sexy thing to think of.
Yeah, it very much could be. Although these days, I'm not sure if there's a mainstream party that doesn't, in one way or another, have corporations in its high priority bracket.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was talking to someone else. They reached out to me and they want to help out the People's Party. And they said the PPC, yes, it's, the funding is quite low comparative to the big boys,
Mhm.
but it's one of the only parties that hasn't been captured by lobbyists. So, like, I guess my question to you would be like, do you agree with that? And what are your views on the People's Party as a populist party?
I I totally think that it is. I think that the way in which we can appeal to all, general Canadian people as well as corporation is with our policy. Our policies are advantageous to both without having to be, paid for with lobbyist cash. So I think we're just truly a good option. We are mindful of taxation and little government interference in industry. So I think that makes us attractive to people who are wanting to enterprise and be entrepreneurial. But also we resonate with everyday Canadians because we aren't advocating for any one particular corporation, or we don't have that lobbyist element. So that's sort of what I think of when I think of us, and how it comes to being attractive to donors of all stripes, or people of all stripes.
I know that you and I both have kind of just started getting involved in politics, so I'm not asking for you to draw from your extensive like campaigning experience, but what do you think is like some of the top issues concerning your constituents right now?
Right now, when I talk to people in Red Deer, cost of living is a huge one. It's sort of the thing that you can't get around, and the elephant of the room, even if you think that you're talking about another thing, that's sort of where it boils down. Housing, and just also sort of noticing a bit of a shift in community where possibly communities that we've all grown up with in a smaller, well, typically smaller city like Red Deer, we do have 115,000, so we're growing, but we're just seeing some differences there. I know that probably because I have a bit of a slant towards people in the health space, I'm hearing a lot of concerns about restrictions on access to natural health products. So those are sort of the the main things that I'm hearing. Of course, I hear from a lot of people about medical freedoms, especially, referencing back to COVID. We still have quite a few people who are not just over what those 3 or 4 years were either. So
You mentioned natural health products. Can you elaborate on that? Like what specifically is the concern?
the concern is just with the restriction to access. So new legislation that either prevents or makes it very challenging to have access here in Canada to things that aren't explicitly allowed or don't meet certain criteria that are meant to protect us, but really feel a little bit more like just sort of keep us dependent on the more westernized medical systems that are in place. So that's just sort of the element that I'm hearing, just knowing that there are some pieces moving through the House of Commons right now that have an impact on I want to say that industry, but it's not really an industry. It's really a method that people are able to maintain their health independent of being reliant on a medical system like we've got here in Canada.
So the reason I asked is I 100% agree with you, and I'm going to do a plug for someone else, Mr. Sean Buckley, the former sort of host of the National Citizens Inquiry. He leads up a not-for-profit organization called the Natural Health Product Protection Agency.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to check him out, they're addressing exactly what you just mentioned.
Yes, and that's awesome work that they're doing. And I know that to give credit where credit's due, our Red Deer Lacombe MP Blaine Calkins has also thrown his hat behind that cause as well. So I'm grateful to see that from him just down the road from where I am now.
Is the your MP there? Is he a conservative?
He is, yes, yeah. So right now we have a riding shift here in Red Deer. So I'm a candidate for Red Deer. The members who we have elected at the moment are for Red Deer Lacombe and then Red Deer Mountain View, which were the ridings in the 2021 election. So I think it'll be interesting to see how those shift as well. But for now, those are both conservative ridings.
I've noticed I'm kind of a data. I'm a total nerd. I have no life, so I just live in a world of spreadsheets, and I track all the attacks that are being made against the People's Party, and they've escalated savagely in the last few months, like the hostile attacks, which tells me that we're doing something right and we're scaring some people. So I don't know. Are you sensing that or what?
I'm sensing that a little bit, and I sit back and I kind of look at that. And for me here in Red Deer, I feel like it's a unique opportunity because the main complaint I've heard as an Albertan is that our votes don't count, and it's decided before it even gets past a certain Eastern landmark. And so I sort of see this as an opportunity that if that's the way even conservative voters have felt, then there's really no harm in actually looking at the parties that are who you would vote for based on your true conviction, as opposed to voting just to get the other guy out. So I do hear that. I'm pretty new on Twitter, but one of the themes that I'm garnering from there is this, that maybe we are a plant for the Liberals in order to split that conservative vote. And I just chuckle to myself because it doesn't feel like that. And it feels like if we have the potential to even split a vote, maybe more people should have a little bit less fear to actually give us a chance. Everyone wants something different, but we need to be willing to do something different. So I know that's maybe a long-winded way of answering that question, but those are sort of the thoughts and leanings. And when I've been in rooms that are full of typically conservative voters, and they kind of mull that over, it seems to make some sense as well. And it's going to be an interesting election, and I really hope people feel like they can try something different and see what happens.
No, I agree. I think people need to start feeling empowered and they need to start voting their convictions,
Yeah,
which means that they're going to have to start getting involved. This right now, we're basically just voting for like Pepsi or Coca Cola.
totally.
It doesn't matter who the salesman is, it's just
Yeah,
a brand.
yeah, and that's what it really feels like. And I mean, I hope that there's a like I know that apathy has traditionally been a problem in Canadian politics, and I just hope that people are realizing that the days when we could sort of get away with that are behind us, and we really need to get out there and we need to become aware and we need to do our research. We need to hear people speak, and we need to decide which of those people is actually going to listen to our, as everyday people, needs, problems, things that we want addressed, and take that to Ottawa with them instead of just sort of settling for these mainstream parties and the things that they sort of decide internally or from influence from bodies that exist outside of Canada. And maybe, the grassroots party has an opportunity to speak free of those sort of boxes or chains that the more mainstream parties have in place for themselves.
You've mentioned that concept twice, bodies outside of Canada. Are you talking about the treason issue with the 12 MPs?
Not specifically, although that is something that is very front of mind. But even, I guess, less sinister, more sinister, sort of the United Nations, the WHO, those bodies that seem to make decisions, and then you see they're brought back and they're applied in different countries by the governments that participate in that. So the treason issue, I'm very also, it's huge, it's wild, and it's sort of baffling to me that there's not more attention on that or demand to know who on the Canadian payroll is acting on behalf of countries other than Canada in that sense. So yeah, I think when I say that, I probably mean a little bit of both, but yeah, it's
Yeah, there's not very many people that support the treason.
yeah, no, and the treason, it's funny. I guess going back to Twitter, because or I guess X, I should say. This is how new I am for that platform, but just seeing people like appalled with other people who may suggest that treason should still be a hangable offense, and then sitting with the idea of, well, have we come so far that it's not seen as that big of a problem? Like, I hear how excitable certain people get about, the Russian influence in media and the Chinese influence in media. And then I think, like, why aren't we that mad about sitting members of parliament who are actively acting on behalf of these countries, other countries, who really knows the extent of it, because we haven't been told very much yet. So
Why do you think that is? Like, what do you think it is about? Because that story went away ridiculously quickly. Well, why do you think it is that Canadians seemingly don't care?
oh, I feel like Canadians are going through a period of time where tribalism has sort of overrode any sort of nationalism or pride in our country that we might have had a little bit stronger historically. And so if it's something that might affect their team, it's convenient not to speak about it, is just a bit of a general sense that I get. I just, say that because I sometimes see that on both sides, where it's like maybe you want to point a finger here, but the other finger could be pointing to the exact same thing, and you can be equally upset about that. But really, if we just, set aside those divisions and demanded as Canadians to know who is acting in good faith and who isn't, it might just get us a little bit further instead of, protecting our guy by not addressing the elephant in the room.
For the record, I agree with you 100%. I think you're calling it tribalism. I think the rule of law has evaporated, and now people just take whatever wins they can. And if it's, the criminal is on their team, they're just like, well, nothing to see here.
Yes, I feel that very strongly as well, and it makes me very nervous to even voice that, being that faith in these systems is what keeps cohesion as a society, as a country, as a nation, united. And when we question, which I've found myself doing a lot over these last few years, the integrity in the justice system in particular, it just makes me nervous and it makes me sad. So,
Well, why don't we stick with that? I'm going to ask you some questions about current events in the court systems, and you can answer honestly. It doesn't matter what your position is, but I believe yesterday or the day before, the Coates boys, they just got 6 years in jail. What's your view on what happened in that trial, if any at all?
I have been paying attention to the Coates for, I mean, since they were arrested, being from Alberta, having, participated in adjacent actions at that time. And I think that it is a real tragedy. And I think that it is an issue that every Canadian, regardless of political affiliation, should be paying very close attention to. So not only were they remanded without having their case heard or discussed before a judge for nearly 1,000 days, if I'm not mistaken, they then had a trial where a jury came to a conclusion, and then that was overridden by a judge. So I just think that at every turn, and that's not even, regardless of their guilt or innocence in the situation, these are just fundamental pieces of our justice system that need to be unfolding in a fair and equitable manner to any Canadian who finds himself in that position. Now, do I think, that they're the crimes they've been committed of were maybe exactly what was written and what was laid? I think there's even some questioning to be done there, and some questions that need to be asked of our RCMP and how that all unfolded. It's a very deep issue, and my heart goes out to those 4 men and their families, and the last few years that they've been, I'm trying to do the math. Time is a bit of a warp now, and I believe that was 2021. So forgive me if it was 2022 when everything went. But yeah, it's just been way too long that they've all been in limbo, and then they have a jury find them with a different sentencing, and then what unfolded yesterday. So I think that it's something that I went to X and had read things, and I just it brings me back to sort of when the Freedom Convoy was unfolding and my own awakening when it came to media and how media is able to blatantly lie and twist a narrative on a situation. When I would watch YouTube videos of a person walking on the street, and at the same time I'd be hearing on the CBC like, this is what's happening, but I'd be seeing with my own eyes over here like, this is what's happening. And I just think it's a lot more consequence will come out of this situation down the road for the precedents that it's set. And some of the tactics that have been employed, I feel, are ones that like are only used in countries where dictatorships are present. Like, I think it's a huge magnitude that's resting on those men, and the outcome of this for all Canadians, really.
The great answer. I can't really add anything to that. I agree with you. The next one I was going to ask you about, this was actually our party leader, Maxime Bernier, and his court case with Brian Peckford.
Yes.
It got thrown out of court on the basis of mootness. If people don't know, moot is like the court's basically saying, the case that was brought, the situation's changed. It's pointless for us to even give a ruling. What do you think about that?
Again, I think that is like a major shortcoming of our justice system to have arrived there. I think when you have, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last surviving signature of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, is that Mr. Peckford's? I'm just stumbling there. Anyway.
No, you're right. Yes, you're absolutely right. Go on.
I feel like, I just feel like if it's a case like this where there's implications to our charter, that it's never moot just because it's not in play now. It's always like, should we not have full resolution of these types of issues just to be forward looking? And I'm not a lawyer. I'm not someone who has in-depth knowledge of exactly how things work in our justice system, but this just feels, again, like a very softball way to say, well, it's not a problem anymore. So everything that happened doesn't really matter, and we won't be proactive about ensuring it maybe happens differently or with some more consideration the next time.
Yeah, to give an example, like for mootness, if you're bringing a lawsuit against the government, if there's like a Chinese spy balloon over the country and they won't shoot it down, and you're bringing a lawsuit to force them to shoot it down, and then it just falls on its own, okay, fine, then it's moot.
Yeah,
there's no point. Like it's already fallen. But like in this case, the government is specifically repealing the law so to avoid having to go to court, and the judge is like, yeah, that looks fine to me.
yeah.
And I'm looking at it as a citizen. I'm like, I'm not an expert. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been my feeling with it, following that in and out, because I know it's experienced a couple of other. It's been a bit of a roller coaster where it's like, okay, maybe oh no. And so it just feels like, now we've gotten off at the end, and it's like, well, what did we even pay for here? So yeah, I think it's another one that will be something that we should look back with a little bit more questioning, as history unfolds.
So the next one this is kind of a positive story. The Mosley decision that ruled that the invocation of the Emergency Act was technically ultra vires, unlawful. I'm guessing you were happy with that, or what's your view on that?
That one, to be honest, hasn't been on my radar immediately. I've followed sort of, again, the roller coaster that has been the different ways that invocation has been looked at. Based on hearing that now, if that has been overturned, I think that sorry, can you just state what the outcome was again?
Oh, it's a Latin term, ultra vires. It basically just, the judge said, hey, Trudeau, you didn't have the right to do this. You acted illegally.
Yeah. Well, and that was my sense of it from the beginning, sort of reading the parameters for the Emergency Act, witnessing the circumstances at the time, then watching like the National Citizens Inquiry, watching I forget what the name of it, but when they were actually interviewing Justin Trudeau and examining it, like that, this feels like a step in the right direction for me as well, for sure, because it really felt like it didn't meet the criteria in my mind reading it. And I'm glad that that's, been decided by someone who's more competent than myself to make that decision.
I was actually really pleasantly surprised, but I was surprised nonetheless. I did not think that anyone in government still had any integrity left.
It's a real, yeah, and that's a real, I mean, it's a real sad state that we've arrived on when we feel that way, but it is a little glimmer that, like, in my heart too, that there are people who have that integrity.
I guess we can move on to the last current event. Jagmeet Singh just recently ripped up their coalition agreement.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to happen? Like, do you think he's going to risk his pension and call an election?
I felt a lot of different ways when he made that announcement the other day. What do I think will happen? I don't have a whole lot of faith that much will happen. I would hope that maybe we are surprised with an ounce of integrity that could be found there, but it feels to me, and maybe this is a little one of my more out there wonderings, is I just wonder if the people sort of behind the scenes have, decided that it's okay for the leadership to move from maybe Trudeau and the Liberals to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, and this is just part of the theater that might harken that in a little bit sooner than October of 2025. We'll see. The other element with that decision that I'm kind of keeping my eye on and having some thoughts about is the Bloc stepping up to say that they'll supply that confidence to the Liberals. And I know that our premier here in Alberta has had some strong words about separatists and their buoying of Trudeau and their place even in the federal government. So I think it's interesting, but I honestly don't have much faith that maybe it was much more than Jagmeet Singh trying to preserve a small bit of his appearance as someone who acts with integrity. But it just doesn't feel, even how he did the whole production behind the announcement, like it felt a bit hollow and a little bit embarrassing, like that he would think people would actually take that as having any authenticity, and then to like sort of backpedal when asked directly if he would vote against Liberals if there was a confidence vote. So it just feels like, again, a bit of theater, a bit of, maybe a slight more hope that we will have an election before next fall. But at this point, I think we need to see how some votes go when Parliament reopens and the chips are on the table.
One other question. I want to get your opinion. What do you think about the carbon tax?
Oh, I think the carbon tax is not a great thing at all for us. I think that any person who thinks that nature or the environment can be saved by a extortion of taxpayer money is a bit silly. I think it's it's too quantifiable. I think we should get rid of it immediately. I think that it's just one more layer and one more racket to fund programs that have a big bill in a country that has no money to do it and takes more money out of everyday Canadians' pockets. And anything that does that, I don't think is good.
And no episode would be complete without me asking for the guests' views on the current levels of immigration in Canada.
Yes. So, I mean, I think that for Justin Trudeau to come out and say that and act like enough is enough, it just really makes me sick. It's like, you created this problem. You've brought in millions of people with the expectation that they would have an opportunity to create a life here in Canada. And now you're saying it's too much and you're going to solve this problem that you created. I do think that the levels of immigration were way too high. It was astronomically too high. But to have the audacity now to have the party that made that situation possible being the party that thinks they're going to be the ones to say that, okay, now is enough, I think it's laughable. And not only is it laughable, but it's very cruel. And I really respect that our party's had a leader who said that from day one, even in the face of being called every name in the book to discredit that position. But I'm hopeful that, there will be a way to turn this around. And I still don't necessarily believe that the Liberal government is going to be the one to honor that. And I don't really think that the Conservative Party of Canada will do it either. Again, it sounds like Jagmeet Singh's pulling out of the deal. It's just sort of part of that theater that's been created. So I want, people who are in Canada already to be taken care of, to be supported, to feel like they are empowered to create the best lives here and participate in the Canada that I grew up in. And we aren't that Canada anymore. And bringing people in at the level that we were wasn't fair to them. It wasn't fair to Canadians. And yeah, that's my, again, long-winded way of and thoughts at the moment on the subject of immigration.
And just so the audience gets a sense of what your positions are on foreign policy, why don't we start with Ukraine? Like, what's your view on what good policy, Canadian policy, would be towards the conflict in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think good Canadian policy would be focused on Canada. I don't think we're in the position for a minute to be offering aid to anyone except for ourselves, and that we need to do a lot of work here to get into the position to maybe be able to look at those types of things in the future. But yeah, my position on Ukraine is don't like what's happening. Think there's a lot of different layers to the truth behind that situation as well. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be something that Canada is actively involved in any capacity at the moment. And, possibly, being a country that takes people fleeing from conflict would be something that has been looked at. But again, we're just not in the position. We can't pour from an empty cup, and the cup of Canada feels like it's pretty bone dry at the moment. So
very similar, related to that question, the conflict in the Middle East. What's your view on the Israel-Palestine situation?
Oh, that is a very layered situation. I'm currently listening to I don't even know how many hour series podcast on sort of the history and the dynamics, and not only the biblical times history, but even the pre-World War I type history on that situation. So I'm not 100% qualified to speak on it, but I do know that Canada's involvement in it at this point, again, should be nothing. We have our problems here. And I believe that, those problems should not be front of mind for us as Canadian people, as Canadian politicians. We need to get Canada back on track. We need to turn our eyes to our own communities and the problems that we've got brewing here, so that we can get ourselves to the position to be of service to people outside our country at a time when we can do that responsibly.
No, it's really well put. We have to fix Canada so that we can fix the world.
Yeah, we gotta be that place that we are proud to have people come into our country, and we can, give them a leg up so that they can live a life of meaning for themselves with pride and with opportunity. And I've always loved that about Canada, but we just have been eroded to a point where um, that's not where we are right now in this moment. So yeah, we need to clean up our living rooms before we have the company come over.
No, that's very well put, and I think you answered every question really well. So your audience, I'm imagining they learned a lot about you, so they know you a lot better as a candidate now.
Awesome, and I appreciate that. It's nice. My favorite part is getting to know people, and I look forward to having conversations and town halls and just learning, what is important to the people of Red Deer more and more and more, and making sure that the people of Red Deer also know how the People's Party can, help and be there and bring a voice of at least honesty back to politics.
No, agreed.
Yeah.
Kyla, in wrapping up the episode, could you maybe tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you?
Yes. So Twitter and Instagram, I'm Kyla Courte PPC. I don't have my website yet, but those would be the best social media places. And of course, joining our membership group, you'll get emails to know where I'm going to be. We've got some exciting things coming on the communication front. So X and Instagram, Kyla Courte PPC for now.
All right, Kyla, I'm going to hold you until after the episode, but I wanted to thank you very much for coming on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Payman.
Take care.
You too.